Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. This is Kero Riri Paddle, and today I am sitting down with Marshall Arnold.
How you doing, Kero?
I'm good. How are you, bro?
Doing good. Thanks for having me on the channel.
Thank you for being a part of this. I appreciate
Sure.
it. So, Marshall is, as you can see from his awesome background, a producer, a musician, someone who has a lot of amazing synthesizers, and he's very helpful within the music creation community. I came across his channel a few years ago, and since then, he's been helping me with spend money when I really don't want to, but then I don't end up regretting it afterwards.
Well, good. You never want to buy something and then regret it. Yeah, definitely don't want that. So,
Going off of that, I'm hoping over the next little while we can talk about synthesizers. We can talk about purchases that we've made over time, and you can also tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today with your channel, with your music, and other stuff.
sure.
Great. So, Marshall, how did you get into synthesizers?
It actually goes a little further back to probably early 2000s. And I had a friend who introduced me to trance music, trance and techno type music. And I hadn't I didn't know about that type of music. I mean, I like as a kid, I always liked keyboard sounds, but I didn't really know about synthesizers or this new kind of techno trance style music until I met this friend of mine. And so I immediately wanted to figure out how to make it, and I thought it was done on computers because in that age, growing up through the 90s and into the 2000s, it seemed like a lot of stuff could be done on computers. So, but doing research into figuring out how to make that style of music, inevitably led me to synthesizers. And it's funny because I didn't start obviously with hardware with all this gear behind me. I started with software. Started with a MIDI tracker called Dream Station, and it had a three oscillators, direct X based soft synth basically with a tracker style a sequencer on it, and you could create tracks and you can import PCM audio samples. And so I'd import some percussion one shot sounds and sequence my percussion and then use the built-in synth there. And that kind of started it for me. And then as I got older and got some money and I was able to invest and start buying hardware. So that's kind of how I got into it.
Nice, interesting. And am I to assume that you're in the hardware world forever and you maybe won't dip back into software?
Oh, I actually still use quite a bit of software. So I play in both the universes. I think they actually can complement each other very well. I think things like FM style synthesis, I think really is suited very well for software because the interfaces can be designed completely different without the limitations of hardware in that regard. In my opinion, anyways, for an FM synth to have a decent UI, you need a lot of knobs, almost like a matrix of knobs. So that's stuff that you can kind of do in software. And so I think for certain things, obviously, software is better than hardware. But in other ways, it's always nice to have hardware because the tactile interaction. And I'm sorry, like I don't think that the software has quite gotten to the level to where it can compete with true analog. It's getting close, and maybe one day it will. But at this point, I still think, analog has got the edge.
I agree with you, especially with the FM
Yeah.
point. Like this, something about FM. I love the sound of it. I love what it can do. I love the approach when it comes to sound creation with it. But you need to have a lot of knobs or do it on a screen, I feel.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of known in the YouTube synth community as being a guy who really hates the Yamaha DX7, and I I think people sometimes equate that to me not liking FM. That's not true. I like FM quite a bit. I just don't like the DX7 because it has a terrible UI. But understanding the historical significance of the DX7, I understand that. But in today's era, like there's no reason to own one, in my opinion, unless you're nostalgic for it, I guess. But that would be the only thing.
Yeah, I love the DX7, but I love it because like that's the synth where I heard a lot of the music that my mom listened to, and then obviously I listened to growing up. So when I finally got it, I was like, what's the hype? I don't understand. Now I have the Reface DX, which, I like having, just to like play something on the couch or, in between projects or whatever. But when it comes to FM, like you're absolutely right. Like it needs to be done with, if not like a huge outboard, like you need to do it through the computer. Otherwise, it's like you're not really tapping into the full power of what FM synthesis is.
Exactly, and that was the issue with the DX7. A lot of people used presets. I know that there's people that program these, but when you see videos with like Herbie Hancock saying he had somebody else design a bunch of patches, not to say that he didn't design some himself, but I mean that's really time consuming. And the goal for me anyway with these instruments is to be able to get in, design some sounds, and start making some music with them. So a UI that's difficult to get around, to get to sounds that you're happy with and want to work with and inspire you, that can be a huge limitation. And that's really my biggest thing with that particular synth. But it has been around since I think 80 or 81. And I'm sure there's probably thousands of patches you can get for it that people have done over the years. So at least there's that, having that long history, to where if you don't necessarily want to dig in and try and figure out how to program FM on a DX7, you could probably find some really nice sounding patches to import into it. And I think I did see something at one point. Somebody designed one of the, like what I was talking about, like a big matrix of knobs that you can control the DX7 from. And then you also have stuff like DexEd, which is a software-based FM synth that you can load in DX7 patches. And then I think you might even be able to do some designing on something like that and then import them into the hardware if you wanted to.
Yeah, DexEd is actually kind of what brought me over to the idea that FM synthesis, for me at least, I feel more comfortable doing through a computer. But yeah, I don't know. I'm always looking forward to like that nice hardware synth that will come out that will be FM, but it'll have all of like the knobs that I'll need. The Korg Op6, I thought that was going to be it, but nah, not really.
Yeah, I looked at the Op6 and I haven't played one, but just looking at the UI, it's better. Okay. It's not membrane interface with a little tiny screen and one slider to do everything, so it's better. But I really think something like the Essence FM. I can't remember the company's name, Cosmo or something like that.
I think.
Kodamo, I think that's it. That seems very interesting to me because the way it's designed with a big screen and you have several knobs and buttons on there, and it's a touchscreen interface. I'm interested to try that to see how that works, because that seems like it might be a winner for FM, I think.
Yeah, I want to check it out too. Just I need that hardware synth for FM.
Yeah.
So Marshall, can you tell us how your introduction to music, to synthesizers and hardware software, how did that bring you to YouTube?
So YouTube, I opened an account in like 2006, I believe. And it was purely to post a video of a synthesizer that I was selling on eBay. So it was literally a demo. This video is still on my channel. It's I want to say it was of the it would have been the SH201. I think that's the first video I ever did. And it was literally to just demonstrate the synthesizer that I was selling, that it worked, and here's some of the features for people that might not know. And that's kind of how my YouTube channel got started. But I kind of didn't pay attention. Those videos racked up quite a few views, especially for back in the early days of YouTube. And I just kind of didn't pay attention and really didn't start seriously pursuing YouTube, in other words, of trying to generate consistent content until like 2016, 2017.
When I was looking at buying a bunch of different synths a couple summers ago, I saw the SH201 in a local ad. So I obviously went to YouTube to Google and find out as much as I could about it. And your video was actually one of the ones that I came across.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. And it was a real throwback. It reminded me of the early days of YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, I did that on a point and shoot camera that was meant to take pictures, but it did video, but not very well. And I didn't do any direct audio recording. It was just kind of, it was very, how do you say, very basic with this. I mean, it was just to show how it worked, and that was it. So, but that's funny that you ended up finding that video. I don't know why, but that video just got a bunch of views. I think it's like, if it's not at 200,000, it's pretty close to that. And it got like a lot almost right away. So I don't know. I just don't think at that time, obviously YouTube was pretty new and a lot of people weren't necessarily posting synth videos, maybe, I guess, I don't know. But it's pretty funny. And that goes all the way back to the beginning of the channel. So that's cool.
The good old days, right?
Yeah.
I went through some of your videos, and I see over time you were creating content such as showing people how to create a trance track from start to finish. You were doing a lot of breakdowns for, as I was mentioning earlier, Roland gear, the DO5 especially. Thank you, by the way, because it seems like Roland didn't quite get the point of releasing the boutiques to the world, because they just gave us the product, that didn't give us a video or demos or like how to back it up and stuff. So like your channel, other channels as well, but yours especially, you guys going into such deep detail about these synths and like what you can do, patch creation, patch storage, how it works, like even like the SEO2, that also helped me with my purchase of the SEO2. That's the kind of content you were making, and it was very, very good and very in-depth.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I mean, when I get something like that that's a little complicated, it makes for a perfect video. It's not the most pleasant experience to try and go through a manual. So having somebody visually show you how to do something, at least to me, like, it's extremely helpful. So I'm glad that I'm able to provide some of that. I did a similar thing kind of with the Waldorf Kyra. Some people are a little confused with the workflow of that. And so I tried to kind of make some videos demonstrating that synth, and a very similar thing. The DO5 is, an exact clone of the D50, which is at the time, there's no knobs or very little controls. It was very menu driven type of interface. And so it can be confusing to understand how that synth works and how to get in and, like you said, backup patches. At the very least, I mean, you want to be able to learn how to import or save patches out of it. So, I'm glad that was very helpful for you. Those were fun videos to make too. So, glad those were helpful.
Thank you. And also, I can tell that you really love the Roland DO5 or the D50, and I feel like we could talk about that all night. I love Roland so much. Something about that sound and like the way they design their synths. It seems kind of like a lifestyle brand to me at this point. But yeah.
They have released some really incredible gear. I mean, through their lineage, it's incredible. They have, there's equipment that they released that at the time failed, but people scooped up and created entirely new genres of music, like the TB303, that pretty much invented acid house. Like, we wouldn't have that without that little box that was supposed to be a little bass player substitute for people to practice with, I guess. I mean, I'm not sure really what the intent was there, but people picked that up and abused it, and it's amazing. And then the drum machines, I've heard, the funny thing is, I heard, if you're familiar with Rick Beato, he's got a pretty big YouTube channel. He goes through and breaks down some very famous tracks. Somehow he gets the Pro Tools sessions where he can actually break down individual tracks and stuff. It's pretty cool. But I did hear him say something that kind of irritated me a little bit, because he was talking about how, the 808 sounds and the 909, I think he's called out the 808 specifically, are just so, they're used so much. And I'm sitting there thinking, dude, how long has the bass guitar been around? How long has the regular guitar? And if we can go back further to orchestral music, like those instruments have been around for a very long time. Pianos, and they're used in all kinds of stuff too. So I mean, it's a sound that people really like, and it sounds really good. So, and that harkens back to Roland and their lineage being very good. The synthesizer portions as well. I mean, the Jupiter 8 is a synth that's like a holy grail synth for me. I don't have one, but I hope to get one someday. It would be nice if Roland would do kind of like what Korg and Moog and I'm trying to think who else. A few other companies have come out with reissues of some of their vintage instruments, and being that Roland is a company that's still around, they could do that. And I really wish that they would do an authentic reissue of some of those analog synths that, right now, if you get one, they're about 20 grand, I think, going on the open market for a synth. And I don't know, that's always scared me to purchase something that's that old for that much money, yeah, it'd be nice if they, and I know that they design the future, and their whole ethos is to not look back, to look forward. And that's cool. You can still do that, but you could still kind of give us, a slice of the stuff that we would really love to have again. And I think it's been proven by these other companies that it would be a good idea.
I've always felt, this is just a hypothesis of mine, but I feel that Roland will release all of those synths again, but that's their end game. I feel like maybe when people aren't into the cloud, or other companies have been releasing gear that surpasses Roland in the marketplace, they're going to throw out the Jupiter 8, they'll throw out the Juno 106, and if it's not a 1v1 reissue, it will be the successor that is what we want, a real analog voice synth that is worthy of the Jupiter name.
Yeah. Like the Jupiter 50 and the Jupiter 80, when those came out, I was really mad. What I would have liked to have seen from them when those came out would have been a successor to the V-Synth GT, something like that. I would have been all about. And, that's kind of what that is, I think. But branding it the way they did, I couldn't get into it. But at the same time, I understand why it's their name, it's their product line, and that's what they're doing. The cloud, though, I will say I really like the cloud concept. And I use the cloud all the time, the Roland Cloud stuff. I do use it a lot. So I think that is a very nice way to go. And the System 8 that they came out with about 2015, the idea of having a synth that you can basically import plugins into, which is kind of what that is doing, I thought was brilliant. And I wish they would have expanded on that and released something that had more voice capabilities. Instead of just 8, maybe a 16 voice version. But yeah, there's still all kinds of really amazing Roland gear to pick from. You've got many decades worth of instruments. Not all of them cost an arm and a leg. That SH201 we were talking about, that's like a very inexpensive synth, and very good for people, I think, first getting into synths. It's got a nice workflow. And the editor on it is really good. You'll have to use it with an older computer because they don't have driver support anymore. But it was technically the second synth I ever owned was an SH201. The first one was an MS2000, but I was still pretty new with synthesis, and I took that back and I got the SH201 because it seemed easier to use. But it had that editor, which allowed for like a programmable arpeggiator, which I thought was brilliant. And not a lot of synths have that for some reason. They don't have, they have the basic up, down, back and forward kind of arpeggiators. But this allowed me to kind of dig in and start doing my own kind of patterns in the arpeggiator, which I really thought was brilliant. So yeah, I think that's actually not a bad synth for people.
Yeah, that's a pet peeve of mine, that ARPs are important. Especially on hardware, they're important because there's only so much you can do when you don't have a DAW in front of you. And it seems like every synthesizer that's coming out today, well, not every, but many of them, they have such basic arps. Like even with the System A, as you mentioned, I love that synth. I think that's one of the best synths that Roland has ever released. It's a like if you buy that, you really don't need anything else if you want a hardware synth. But the ARP is like 8 patterns, 6 patterns.
Yeah.
And you can do stuff with the sequencer, yes, but sometimes, like, especially when you're just like in a rush, you want to make a patch quickly, or if you're jamming live, you want something more than just up, down, up, down, down, and random, which isn't really as random as you'd expect.
Right. Well, and they tried kind of doing some stuff with the Jupiter X with that I arpeggiator. I don't like the idea of AI running that kind of stuff. I guess for how do I explain that? For me personally, I like to have exact control over what is happening, and so to have a machine kind of just randomly do stuff, I'm not a fan of that. There's people that enjoy that though, and I'm sure you get some really interesting things, but you don't have that repeatability. And I want to make stuff that I can either perform out somewhere, or that can be reproduced. That's kind of the main thing for me, and I want to know that what it's doing is what I want it to do. But yeah, you're right. And so because of that, actually, it made me go hunt for an external arpeggiator that would work in a DAW. I'm an Ableton user. And so the arpeggiator that's in Ableton isn't the best. It's okay. But I ended up finding a plugin called Blue Arp. I'm not sure. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's a standalone VST that is, it's an arpeggiator, and I guess it could be a pattern or a step sequencer as well if you wanted it to be. But it allows you that kind of control that I was missing from, say, the SH201 app. And that was in 2006, mind you, that synth came out. But I can apply that to any synth now. So that's kind of the way I went because of the lack of that programmability of the arpeggiators.
Blue Arp, you said, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll look into it.
Yeah.
Blue Arp. Yeah, as someone who lacks skill and dexterity with their keyboard playing, I really do appreciate a good ARP. And also, like, I like the sound of an ARP because, like, it can be cyclical, but it can also be very hypnotic. So for me, like, if you could get great patterns, it really adds a lot to the compositional aspect of music.
100%, and especially when you're doing stuff like trance, like me, it's kind of a necessity to have a lot of flexibility with your arpeggios. So yeah, that's the Blue Arp is really good for that. There's probably others out there. That was kind of the one that I found and really liked. It has a lot of really great functionality. And full disclosure, I've been working with the gentleman who designed that app. He's been making a hardware version of that called the Blue Arp DM, and I'm one of the beta testers for that. But yeah, that's it's still extremely helpful. And having that in hardware form is even better than the plugin, in my opinion, because you can just take some of this stuff and throw it on a table somewhere and plug it into your Blue Arp and a controller, and you're good. So I'm pretty excited about that too.
Nice. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
Going off of that, can we talk a bit about your career in music, whether it's production, mixing, mastering, writing, collaborating with others, and working with brands?
I have been with a few independent labels. None of them are around anymore. And I ended up starting my own label. And that's kind of the extent of my music career, I guess. I feel like it's very tough to get people into independent music sometimes. And, I had always been, I've never been able to figure out a way to really present my music in a way that I want to live until recently. So these are things that I'm working on even still. And hopefully once the COVID stuff kind of simmers down and we can start doing things again, I hope to try and expand on that and do some kind of live type of performance and things like that. That's always been a dream of mine, and it started with the music production, and then it kind of, because it's so complicated to produce. And I've heard that, I think deadmau5 said something like, you can produce one track really well live, but you couldn't do a whole bunch. And I think that now you can. That may have been true when he said that, which was probably like something like 10 years ago or something. But I definitely think you can do it now with the stuff that's out there. So that's something I'm going to hopefully pursue. And as far as brand stuff, I've never been asked to do anything for any brands. Sometimes I'm a little opinionated about certain things and I'll go off on rants sometimes. And that's probably not the best thing for a brand sometimes. And maybe that's why I haven't heard anything of that. That and the fact that my channel's super tiny and I'm basically nobody really in the grand scheme of things. So, I wouldn't be opposed to doing anything like that. I guess in a way I'm kind of doing that with the Blue ARP. I'm helping, but that's, the gentleman that designed that is one person, it's not a big company or anything. So, yeah.
I will say that it's good that you're opinionated, because something I noticed with your channel and something that I noticed with a lot of great YouTubers is the engagement that you have with people that comment on your videos. Your comment sections for many of your videos will go 12, 15, 20, 30 comments long, and you're responding to them. You're really engaging with them, and you're talking about the quirks of this product, or you're talking about like the benefits, or elaborating on something that was in your video. And a lot of the times, especially nowadays, where it seems like there's like gases everywhere, but it like they're really pushing, like companies are pushing for creators to create that sort of like that environment where you want to buy everything because every single YouTuber gets this product and they release this video about this hot product at the same time on the same day. So like, while I understand it from a marketing perspective, I'm in marketing and I love to see it, but at the same time, as a creator, I want to see someone give an objective review. If like the Acoustasonic Jazzmaster from Fender came out last week or 2 weeks ago, and I remember waking up and I saw 20 channels on my YouTube feed that had that video, and it's like every single review was the same. None of them were really going into detail about the quirks of the product, which is something that I noticed with smaller YouTube channels, and in this case with yours, like you were pointing out with the DL5 things that I should be aware of that I wasn't seeing from other videos. You were pointing out things with like with the Kero, which is already kind of a buyer beware synth, but like it's you showed the good and the bad about it, and I wish more channels would do that.
Yeah, it's it makes sense for companies to cultivate the their crew, so to speak, for their social media marketing. So I understand that, but yes, you're really getting very top level. It's like the frosting. You and I actually had I posted on Automatic Gainsay's channel today. He posted something about the Polybrute. Some people in forums commenting that it was a thin sounding synth from what they had heard. And he demonstrated, well, you can make it sound thin, but you can also make it sound not thin. And, I mentioned to him, that's part of the problem with that very top level thing. People will base their decision sometimes just on that. And it's hard sometimes to portray what something can do or what it really is from a 10-minute video going through presets kind of thing, and not that those are bad. Those definitely have a place. And it's just sometimes really great equipment gets overlooked sometimes because it ships with bad presets or something like that, or people don't really understand how the UI works because they spent 10 minutes on it and didn't read the manual. So it's definitely good to, if you're really interested in something, do a little deeper dive, because there's probably somebody out there who is doing things like what we mentioned, what you mentioned with the DO5 or the Kero, to kind of explain some of those quirks and some of those things that you may not be aware of. And then I think at that point you can make a little bit more of an informed decision, because a lot of, at least around me, where I'm at, I'm in Tampa, there's not a lot of high-end synths when you go into the music shops. There's some, but if I wanted to say go look for a Kero or a Polybrute or something like that, or a Hydrosynth, maybe they have one, but most likely they probably don't. So I'm relying on, for me as well, the things that come out online and some of the demos and things like that too. but it's extremely important, I think, yeah, to have people go through and demonstrate a little more in depth instead of just a very top level type deal. If that makes sense.
It does. And I think more people are starting to realize that now. I guess it's because we've all been home for so long and we've been consuming so much more online content that it's now starting to become a little bit more discernible.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, like I said, it makes sense for the companies that, they still need to make, profit, and they want to sell you these items. And a lot of people are online. And the first thing I do when I get anything, or if I'm interested in anything, is I will search for YouTube and see if there's a video of somebody talking about it or a demo or something. So it's definitely the right way to go. I can't tell you the last time I watched TV, because I don't have cable. I just pretty much all my content is online, and I don't know how many people are like that, but that's kind of the advertising, is like, if I'm interested in it, I will go and find it, and hopefully there's good content about it. That's how I end up making decisions with a lot of these purchases.
While we're talking about synths, do you think you could tell us a little bit about what you think of brands today, whether it's software or hardware? For me, like, as I mentioned already, I love Roland. I look forward to everything that they do, even though I wish they did more. I have my fingers crossed that we'll get like a JD 800 990 boutique. I'm hoping that we get like a nice Roland Cloud specific style MIDI keyboard. I want to see them do another analog synth. I don't care if it's 4 voices or 6 voices. I just want something from them. But I'm also extremely interested in what Korg is currently doing. Yes, 3 octaves. Yes, weird designs, not as much real estate as you'd expect, but they're very forward thinking when it comes to the digital and the virtual analog side. I like Yamaha for what they do performance wise, and even like the smaller companies like Modular and like effects based companies, they're putting out so many great things, and I feel like there's something for everybody at this point in time. Even with Sequential, they've been hitting it out the park every single time, every single release. What over the last few years have you liked, and what are you looking forward to?
I like almost everything. Honestly, like there's, and that's a very broad statement, but what I mean by that is almost anything that you end up buying is going to, it's going to serve you in one way or another. It's just a matter of how much time you're willing to put into the instrument to learn it. If it is something that's a little odd, not everything sounds like butter. A lot of the stuff you hear on the radio or in film and TV or any kind of produced work, a lot of times people spend a lot of time cultivating sounds and designing and composing, and there's a lot of effort that goes into that. So it's not like I turn on my Moog 1 and I sound amazing. Now, you got to spend some time working with the instruments. So in terms of what I have that I really like, I mean, I like everything I have in here. That's why it's here. If I didn't like it, I wouldn't have it. So, but what I would definitely like to see is companies like Roland, like we were talking about. Let's give the people what they want, so to speak. There's a lot of people. I'm not the only one, I'm sure, but I know at the same time we're probably a very niche type part of the market. But we would really like to see some authentic analog recreations of some of their classics. That's why companies like Behringer, when they come out with these clones or announcements of clones, people freak out because it's impossible to get one unless you are willing to take the risk of buying something that's very expensive, that's 40 plus years old or whatever. So I would love to see more companies do that type of thing. And a lot of them have like Sequential is one. Dave Smith, I think I recall him saying he would never do a reissue of the Prophet 5, and lo and behold, he did. Yeah. And thank goodness, thank you, Dave Smith. That I had not ever bought a Dave Smith instrument or a Sequential instrument until that, and I didn't even know what I was missing. But had he not done that, I don't think I don't know that. Maybe I would have eventually, but it was a conversation that I've had before where people ask me, why don't you have any Dave Smith stuff? And it's like, well, I like the Prophet 08 or something, but it's kind of like there's always something I want more. Until the Prophet 5, I ended up getting a Prophet 10, but at the same time, I wouldn't have even been interested necessarily like that. Like I was very enthusiastic because that's one of the most classic of the classics. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'd love to see more of that. And in the meantime, anything else that comes out, it's hard to pick at some point because there's so much now. So I want to say the last synth that I picked up, well, it would have been the Prophet 10, but prior to that, maybe the Kyra, or no, I did pick up a Hydra synth, but I haven't used it very much. So, but there's just so much to pick from now, which is a good thing because having so much choice is good, I think. The hard part is figuring out what should you get, or for what your goals are, what you're trying to do. That's where it can get a little hairy. And for me, it took me a long time to kind of figure out what type of stuff I liked in terms of synths. And that only happened because I would buy stuff and I would use it, and then if I didn't like it, I would sell it, or if sometimes I ran out of money and had to sell it. But those I bought again, like the little fatties here. I bought and sold those multiple times going through my 20s because I needed the money, but I always, as soon as I could, I bought another one. So yeah, I guess, I don't know if does that answer the question?
It does. But I do want to elaborate on a couple synths, if that's all right.
Sure.
I'm living vicariously through you, so.
Sure.
The Waldorf Quantum.
Yes.
What can you tell me about that? When I see that synth, I think that is a very forward-thinking digital that I would like to see every company have. I would love to see Korg, for example, take their VPN, their FM, their take on like wavetable and put it into one big digital synth. I'd love to see Roland do that. I'd love to see Sequential come out with a really wicked digital synth. I think digital is the future. There'll always be a place for analog, but you don't see as many as like the Hydra synth and the Quantum. What can you tell me about those synths?
So the Quantum is, I agree with you. It's very forward thinking in terms of what the possibilities within that compared to, a standard analog synth is. It's not even comparable. Like the digital is going to win every time. You can get so creative because you can do things like sample into it, really mangle it using the granular functionality within the synth. They added the FM capabilities to it, which when I got this, it didn't have that yet. But that's one of the nice things these companies do is they will continuously improve the operating systems on these synths and add more features over time. And hopefully they don't ship with too many bugs, but if they do, hopefully they fix those. It doesn't always happen, but but yeah, I'd say the Quantum is one of the most innovative synths I think that's in here in terms of what you're. I mean, it's hard to even say because I don't even know everything it can do. It's so. But I agree with you. The space for digital instruments is very, very interesting and limitless, really, because of the digital realm. The things you can do in digital, you just can't do in analog. But what analog does, it does it very well. So until we end up hitting a point, and I think we will get there at some point, where the digital stuff can sound just as good as an analog tour. And we might even be at that point to a certain extent. Like I bet you if somebody played, System 8 with the Jupiter 8 plugin and a real Jupiter 8, and you didn't know the difference and you're doing the Pepsi challenge kind of thing, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference anyway, I think, at this point. But there's certain things with the way the high-end frequencies kind of sound. I don't know how to explain it. Like sometimes though, there's stuff that'll give it away that it's digital when it's emulating analog. But I think digital is best as when it's doing digital things and it's not necessarily trying to do analog things. That's where I think digital, like FM, like we were talking about, with the right interface is amazing. You can do some of the coolest sounds I think I've ever heard come from FM. So but no one could do it in the 80s because the DX7 is extremely difficult to get into. So, yeah. So the Quantum's really great. Hydrosynth, I have not dug into that one yet. Unfortunately for the Hydrosynth, around the time I got that, the ARP 2600 reissue arrived, and then shortly after that, I bought the Prophet 10. So, yeah, I've been playing with those. So, I will get into the Hydrosynth though, and the designer of that, he's the same guy that did the Matrix Brute.
Really?
Yes.
Oh.
He used to work for Arturia, as far as I understand. So
Nice.
He knows how to design synths, and the Hydrosynth is one of the has for the limitations of what's on the control surface. They made really great design choices for that interface. And before I bought one, I demoed one at KnobCon, which is a synthesizer convention that happens in Chicago every year, except last year it didn't happen. But and I really, really liked it. So I think that I don't know. I'll have to reserve more judgment on that until I can really play with it and go through its manual and things. But from what I had played initially, yeah, it really caught the synth market by storm. And in some ways, it kind of ruined the Kyra, because the Kyra came out. People seemed to be pretty excited for that. Almost like an updated version of the Axis Virus. And then this Hydrosynth comes out that does all this crazy wavetable stuff and using mutators to like morph between the waveforms, and it made the Kyra look like it was from the 90s or something, But the Kyra has its own, like, yes, it doesn't, it's, they're different things. But the sad thing is the Kyra is probably the best sounding synthesizer I own. Fidelity wise is amazing.
Wow, really?
Yes. And it's something that you can't really translate something like that over a video on YouTube. You really got to listen to one. And one of the detractors for that synth is that a lot of the presets sound very similar. So you really need to get in and work and play with it and design some sounds. So I will stand by that's the best sounding synth that I own at the moment.
Nice. That makes me want to play one right now, actually.
Yeah.
The Prophet 10.
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell us a little bit more about that? I was a little surprised to see the 5 and 10 come out because, like you said, I never thought Dave Smith would go back to that. But it seems like everyone who puts their hands on those boards, like they love it, and it's magic. Everyone says the same thing.
It really is. I don't know what it is. I mean, it's a very simple interface. That's part of the charm of an instrument like that. Same with like the Mini Moog, right? I mean, timeless. It's got that tone. It's very easy to use. It's almost impossible to get a bad sound out of a Mini Moog. And likewise, out of a Prophet 5. They're just made very, I don't know how to explain it. Like, they just have a very good tone, and the interface is very easy to get at and experimenting. And I don't know, like, they just sound great. Like, I don't know what else to say. They sound great and they're easy to use, and that's a winner in my book. So, yeah.
Well, that's why it's a classic, right?
Yeah. Well, at the time, that was the first synth that came out with patches, storable patches that you could recall that were saved digitally on the synth. Before that, I mean, I think the CS80 had something, but you had to like almost like mirror the settings on like a smaller version of little sliders and stuff. So, I mean, there were synths that kind of tried to do that, but the Prophet 5 was the first one that had fully, presets and patches that you can make and save and then recall easily. So it was the combination of the microprocessor and the synthesizer right at the right time. So, in interviews with Dave Smith, he says he was waiting for somebody else to do it because he thought, well, that makes perfect sense, and no one did, and then he did it because no one was doing it. So, and changed changed the world of synthesizers because of that.
Thank goodness for Dave Smith, huh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And he did MIDI. MIDI was his thing, and gave it away. What a cool guy.
For real, yeah. A real pillar in the community, for sure.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Behringer?
Behringer, I've got kind of a mixed emotions on. At first, when they came out with the first synth that they came out with, the DeepMind 12, I was super excited, and they made the promise of doing clones of some of these vintage synths that people like myself would really love to get, but I'm not going to spend a fortune on a 40-year-old instrument. So the prospects were huge. The DeepMind 12 came out. The one I got, unfortunately, had a defect, and that's literally the only synth that I've ever bought in my entire life so far. I guess I'm lucky, but it came with an issue to where I couldn't even use it. And unfortunately, they had hyped this thing up, and I was like, and it doesn't work. But I got that sorted out, and that synth is really good. That's probably the best synth that they've made, in my opinion. The subsequent synths that they came out with, yeah, they're good, but they kind of I don't know how to explain what I'm going to say because it might make people angry, but they're very generic. They're the clones, right? But it's like when you go on eBay and you're looking for a GoPro, but then instead there's that like Chinese one that's kind of pretending to be a GoPro. That's what it reminds me of. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so the experience obviously is not going to be there because you're not playing in an actual mini Moog with the Behringer Model D. It does sound very good, and they've done that with a lot of their reissues. I don't think all of them have been home runs or anything, but most of them have been pretty good, if not dead on, with what they were going for. What I would like to see them do though is put a little more effort into how they look, and at the same time, like you don't have to. Like the Poly D, I think really irritated me because they're trying to make it look like a mini Moog, and it's not. I did not like that. It felt almost insulting, and they've done some really bizarre things too. Like they were trying to trademark Oberheim, the name. The guy's like still alive, and like trying to take somebody's namesake, like stuff like that is, and I know that probably doesn't matter to the average person who's just going and wants to get into electronic music and maybe buy some synths. I don't have a problem with that, but at the same time, like the company's done some really stuff that's kind of like, it's kind of cringe. So, yeah.
Yeah, I feel you on that. I love the company. I'm not going to lie. I think what they're doing is great because it's like I come from the guitar world, and I love that over the last 3 to 5 years, people are seeing that like Harley Benton and Harmony and all of these other brands, even Squier or Epiphone, like maybe they're not as high of quality as Fender and Gibson and Suhr and all these other brands, but that doesn't mean you can't make compelling music and enjoy your hobby and participate in the community with these lesser brands. And a lot of them are being made to a very high standard now. But also, I agree with you that there's a lot of like questionable actions that they've done over time, and like I come from the marketing world, so I kind of understand like certain choices will be done so you can also like stir conversation, and like obviously Uli knows what he's doing. His company, the people that he employs, they know what they're doing. They're very calculated with what they do. But if you're going to be creating an OBXA, which you were teasing as UBXA, but then all this time you really wanted to do the OBXA thing, and then you finally reveal it, it's like that, like why why the cloak and dagger? Why not just be honest with your intentions, or do something that isn't going to be stabbing someone who's still alive? Yeah,
not just somebody. I mean, it's Tom Oberheim. that's going to make a lot of people upset.
Yeah.
So, I 100% agree with you. Like my thing when they started doing this stuff, I was like, this is great. I'm going to be able to get the sound of an ARP. I'm going to be able to get the sound of a Moog, all these things. Cause I didn't have a mini Moog when they were talking about doing that. I ended up getting one of the reissues right before Moog stopped making them. But, it was only because it went on sale and it was at a price point that I was like, oh, if I don't get this, I'm going to kick myself. And I ended up getting it. So, but had I not had this, I'd be using the Behringer D, which I still have. I have one. But I mean, that's way more. It's not even in here. I'm pointing over here. It used to be in here. It's in the other room. But the Mini Moog, it's way more fun to use the actual Mini Moog. But if I didn't have one, that's amazing. It's just sad that the company itself decides to put itself in just ridiculous situations sometimes. They don't need to do that. Like the DeepMind 12 speaks for itself. I think originally they were planning to kind of do a clone of the 106, the Juno 106, but it evolved into something more. I like that. That makes sense to me. You're going to do a clone of something, make it better than it was, not shove it in the same little form factor box that you've made like 10 or 20 cents for now. And like, I don't know, like they're serving a purpose. And in terms of, spectrum on the scale of branding, lesser brand, I wouldn't necessarily call it that. It's just it's a more affordable product. They all sound good. I mean, the thing that's going to will be interesting will be how long do they last? Are they durable enough to last for a long time? And some would argue maybe that doesn't matter because they're pumping out so many of them and they cost almost nothing. Comparatively, it would be simple to replace. But I don't know about you. If I spend a few $100s on something, I hope it lasts more than like a year or two.
Yeah,
a lot of these instruments are designed to last like your whole life. So, yeah. That'll be the interesting. And I would like Behringer. I mean, I would like them to come out with, and they kind of did this with the Poly D and then the Mono Poly, which angers me because the branding and the way that's named is not theirs, and it's similar to the Poly D, but it sounds really good and it has a cool design, but they could have done without. I mean, it's like they're trying to confuse consumers, and especially if you're a younger person or somebody who doesn't know a lot about synths, you might think, oh, that's like the same thing as the actual Poly, Mono Poly or a Mini Moog. No, they're kind of like I said, it's like the Chinese company making the knockoff of the real thing. And that's sad. They don't need to do that. They're the only ones, luckily some of these companies are starting to do some of these reissues, but they don't need to try and copy the namesake and the styling. And I mean, you could be original. You could take some artistic license and do something cool, base it off of something. And you can say in the marketing material, based off of whatever, and it would be fine. People would still go gangbusters. If anything, I think that's more respectable to do it that way, personally. But, like you said, they know what they're doing. I'm just some guy who's on the internet. So,
yeah. Still, though, I do want to see what they can do with originals as well. Like, I feel that there's a lot of great product coming from them that are original ideas, and they have the manpower and they clearly have the ability to do so, but it's like the DeepMind came out so many years ago. I don't even know if their OBXA is coming out this year. I want to get the Pro 800 because I've always wanted like the Pro 600. But even is that coming out this year? If it does, when will it be available in my country? Like all of these questions about this brand that they promise so many things. What they've delivered on has been so questionable. Will they continue to go in that direction, or will they go in a more positive direction in the future? I really wonder.
Well, that's part of the problem with them, and I think I have a video on my channel calling them synth teasers because they talk, and this was like a couple of years ago even, they would talk and show you pictures of this thing that they're supposedly working on, but we don't know when it's coming out and if ever. And it's stuff that I'd be interested in a UBXA. I would like to see what that's all about. The RD9, their 909 clone, I'm extremely interested in that one. Still not out. It's been a couple of years. I mean, and we don't, we're not privy to the inner workings of the company there. Maybe there's some hurdles that they're having to clear, or some issues with trying to get things to sound. Somebody made a point one time that made a lot of sense. They said trying to clone something is actually, in their opinion, more difficult than making something original, because if you're cloning it, you got to make it sound like as close to the original thing that you're cloning as possible. And that makes sense. So maybe that's some of it too, like trying to get some of these instruments or things that they, say that they're working on to sound like the thing that they're supposed to sound like, may be a little more difficult than they anticipated initially, maybe. So who knows? But yeah, I would like to see some more of that from them, but at the same time, I would like them to kind of cool their jets. You don't have to promise everything and deliver nothing. Like, that's going to make people really mad. Maybe that's the idea, I guess. Maybe any news is good news, and keeping yourself kind of in that news cycle perpetually, people mentioning you and talking about you, like, I guess is not a bad thing. I don't know. But at the same time, like, I think people will they'll just forget about it. The money go elsewhere. Maybe they'll go buy some boutiques or something.
Yeah. We'll see. A lot to look forward to.
Mm-hmm.
Marshall, what other hobbies do you have aside from music?
I'm pretty big into movies and films and stuff. I'm a sci-fi fan, and those are kind of I'm a big computer nerd. I like building computers and technology, so those are kind of my things. I guess that all kind of makes sense with the music stuff. It's very technical, and I would say like everything that I enjoy kind of coalesces with the music stuff, because a lot of cool sci-fi films have some really great sound design that use synthesizers, and music that was made with synthesizers and things like that. So yeah, those are kind of my main things, though.
Nice. What are a couple of movies or series, sci-fi or otherwise, that you're into?
I like, I really liked Tron Legacy. That was like such a cool movie. The way they brought a franchise that was like 30 years old at the time back, and Daft Punk did the soundtrack, and it was I really enjoyed that. I wish Disney would have made a third Tron. I don't know if they are. I've heard stuff that maybe they are now, that Star Wars is going to be kind of on the back burner. I'm a big Trekkie fan, so I like all the Star Trek movies. Even some classic stuff like I liked Casablanca, Rebel Without a Cause. Some of those from like way back in the day that I think everybody should watch. Like Casablanca was amazing. They filmed that in 2 weeks. And you watch it.
Really?
Yeah. And it's amazing. It's really good. And it's old, but it's really good. So yeah, that'd be a recommendation.
I'm a little bit of a film buff myself, but like I didn't even know 2 weeks to create that masterpiece. Wow.
Yeah. They did it. Filmed it in 2 weeks.
Wow. It makes you wonder why it takes so long to create the movies that we get now, and there aren't many that are very I'm not going to say bad. Like I don't think there's any bad movie nowadays, even like bad television, because there's so much of it that's made towards a target audience or demographic. It'll hit, but like I want to watch something that's going to be a masterpiece. Like you said with Tron, when I watched Tron, that really turned me on to electronic music. Mm-hmm. and like for a lot of people, they say like John Carpenter, Halloween, and all those other movies, like that's what turned them on in the 80s. For me, it was Tron, and then through Tron I ended up getting into like synthwave, and from synthwave it brought me to where I am today with music. So I love to see that. I want to see more more movies that have that same impact, like what we used to get back in the day, and even all those decades ago.
Yeah, and that's actually, it's funny you mentioned that, because I love those 80s movies. The cheesier, the better. Big Trouble in Little China, you were mentioning John Carpenter. That's one of his movies.
That's
a good
one.
Awesome. I love that movie.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of some other, I don't know, like the campy 80s, that they were trying everything back then. It was cool, and a lot of the effects were practical, and even the original Tron, like that was like cutting edge when that came out, because that was, I think, the first feature film to incorporate computer generated graphics as sequences in the film. So of course it came out, I think, the same year as E.T., so it got buried at the box office.
Yeah.
But it was very innovative. And yeah, it's hard to, like, now everything is kind of gone so that way. It's okay to do that, but you got to have the story there. You got to get me to care about what's happening. And sometimes when it's just a slugfest with a bunch of CG explosions, and I don't know that I care that much about what's happening. It's cool to see, but yeah, it doesn't have the same impact as some of those oldies in the 80s, right? Those are fun movies, a lot of them. And they, like you said, they have great soundtracks. And I don't know.
Something about that decade, everything about it. It was music, fashion, movies. It was like, maybe because technology was advancing so quickly at that point and everyone wanted to embrace it, that's why they were willing to take chances. But like, the stories were good. A lot of those films, like you said, even though they're cheesy, they still hold up. Like they're fun to watch, and
they're fun. Yeah.
And they have identity, they have character. I don't really get that anymore with, like, you still get the odd really good movie nowadays, but I don't see something and think this is the era that people were living in, and this movie is a proper representation of that era, like you do with the 80s. When you watch the 80s, you can tell how impactful it was then, and you can see how it's so impactful today.
Yeah, but it's funny at the same time, like, because I grew up in the 80s, it was just kind of the way it was, you know? I've always liked it because I remember it and it was fun and it was cool. The cool thing, though, is I watched a documentary on New Wave recently, and there's a lot of younger people that are producing New Wave from basically making music from a decade they didn't experience themselves, but they really enjoy it, which is cool. And yeah, so definitely, like you said, something about the 80s and the way it's presented. It seems larger than life now because everything is, I don't know. It's like the 80s, I'd say the early 2000s, like things just kind of started getting less outrageous in a way. I mean, that's kind of when like reality TV started coming on, and like it's just a whole different tonal shift with entertainment, I think, at that point, because there's some good stuff from the 90s too, I think, but the 80s really took it to the max, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great decade. I don't know, it's good stuff.
I have a couple more questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
What does trance mean to you?
Trance to me is a digital orchestra. It is creating soundscapes that invoke emotion and good thoughts, or just really cool sounds. You know, that's the essence of it to me, and it makes you want to move. It has an energy that makes you want to get up and dance and jump around and have a good time. That's what it means to me.
I can tell you really do love it. A lot of your videos on your channel, when you're making trance and you're talking about it and you're putting it together, I can tell that's someone who, like, that genre of music has really impacted their life. And I don't know how much it's shaped who you are today, but when I think of music that's impacted me and shaped me, the way I talk about it and the way I glow, it's kind of like what I see with you when you talk about trance.
Yeah, it's the first time I heard it, I was mesmerized. It was the most incredible sounds I had heard in my entire life. And I wanted to be the one who could also make people feel that way, if that makes sense. So that's kind of why I got into it on the production side. is to hopefully invoke those types of feelings in others by creating this music. And it's funny because now it seems like such a long time ago. That was 20 years ago.
Time flies, huh?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I like trance too. I used to go to this club in Toronto that like they had multiple rooms, and there was just like one trance room, and the DJs that they would bring in there, or even the house DJ, he'd be in that room. It was modern trance, but there'd also be a lot of like throwbacks, and it reminded me of the 90s, because like that's when I was born, that's when I was raised, and like it reminded me of a lot of those game soundtracks and the music that I heard. And then I would want to go further, so I would listen to like satellite radio that had trance remixes and stuff. And it's an approach to music that I feel never got as much respect as it deserved. Like trance was obviously popular, but something about trance, like acid, I feel the same way with too, but like trance is very, as I said earlier, hypnotic, and it is emotive.
Yeah. I think what happened is it got very samey once it kind of got popular. I think the same kind of thing happened with dubstep. Dubstep did not sound like Skrillex, everybody. It did not sound like that. But once that came out and became popular, everyone kind of clones that. And then unfortunately the genre suffers from that, I think. I think trance has definitely had that effect. That has affected it to a certain extent. But it's funny because when I listen to things like progressive house, I hear a lot of trance elements in there. So it's like it's almost kind of merged into other genres as well. So, and I would recommend people to try and find some trance from the early 90s. It's not going to sound like the stuff that you think. And I've had some younger people try and argue that it's not trance. That's what it was. So before it kind of got all commercialized and sounding all the same, go explore, go find some old school trance and techno and listen to that stuff. It's good. And when you think about how they would have made it, that makes it even better, at least to me, because I'm like, they would have been using like Amigas and big old, analog desks, plugging all their synths in, trying to make these tracks. Yeah, that's pretty cool. That makes it even cooler, I think.
On the topic of trance, Roland has played a big part in that. Well, maybe a big part, but like supersaws,
Mm-hmm.
But something that I really appreciate about your channel is how much love you show to old Roland gear, whether it's their digital stuff or even something like the V-Synth. What could you tell audiences about the V-Synth that some people may not realize about it?
Is 16-part multi-timbral.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Most people probably don't know that. So it doesn't have all the outputs on it like a virus does, for example. But you can literally set up 16 patches, run them and trigger them via different MIDI channels. And I did a video on my channel where I was featuring some of the reissued synths that have come out, since I have several. I kind of did a live performance. That video, I am using a V-Synth GT, or no, it's an original V-Synth. It's not even the GT. It's the original. And I'm using I can't remember if it's 2 or 3 different timbres. I think it's 2 from the V-Synth for that video. So, but that's a cool feature, I think, that people don't even know about.
Nice. I need to buy one. I really do.
They're not super expensive. I think the V-Synth was probably the last really cool synth from Roland in terms of innovation. I was not impressed with the Jupiter 80 and 50. I didn't like, how do I say this? At first, when the boutiques were announced, I hated them because they originally didn't transmit MIDI CC on the panel. And I'm like, you're making this digital clone. It's little and I can't even use it really. for what I would use it for. But they ended up fixing that within a few months, and they issued firmware updates to where you could. So that means I've got full MIDI control over the front panel, and that's what I need when I'm doing productions. So those grew on me, and I ended up really liking those, and I own all of them except for the new drum machine, the TR-06. So, and like I said, the System 8, I don't have one, but at the same time, I've got my V-Synths, which I think are pretty amazing. And then I've got the Cloud for the other stuff, which has the System 8 engine in it. Yeah. So, yeah.
No love for the JDXA?
The XA is, see, that's one synth that they did where they put an analog oscillator and a filter on there. But what I heard, the reason why I don't have one or never tried one is they made the mistake of making it piano gloss black with like red lettering, and no one can see what it says. And then that's okay, right? You can kind of work around that. It's not the best thing. But the thing that made me really not buy it was the MIDI implementation. The way that works is like really weird. And I can't go into details because I don't know exactly without refreshing my memory on what the deal is with that. But there was some weird way that the MIDI worked. And I was like, okay, Paul, I'm not even going to mess with that.
Fair.
With the JD XA was that the smaller one?
JDXI.
The XI was the small. The XA was the big one, right?
Yeah, I have the XI. It's okay. Yeah. It's okay.
The XI is fine. Yeah. That's a good little thing, I think. Yeah. I've seen some people do some cool stuff with those. I think the XM kind of takes the place of that now. Yeah. So, yeah, that's a cool little thing. But unfortunately, it was a good idea that didn't seem like it was implemented very well.
Sounds like Roland.
Yeah, and maybe in 10 years, everyone's like going to be, man, we should have bought those JDXAs when they were cheap.
For real. Yeah, it's going to happen. Parting question. Your channel over the years has done so much different content, from live streams to, as I said, engagement with people who come to your channel. You talk with many, you show us many different synths and what they can do. Do you have any advice for any new tubers and YouTubers, and what do you see for the future of your channel?
The biggest advice I would give somebody who's starting a YouTube channel is consistency is king. Be sure to create as much content as you can without burning yourself out, and make it as high quality as you can. Doesn't mean go spend thousands of dollars on all this equipment. You can do very good videos with a phone and a small mixer. So, and if you're doing synthesizer content, make sure you get direct audio. Don't record with your phone mic. But yeah, consistency, I think, is the main thing. And then for the future of my channel, I don't know. I hope to kind of do a virtual concert with what I've been working on over the last year or so. And hopefully I can get that up on the channel. That's kind of that'll be a fun thing. I'm also working with a friend of mine. We're working on a music video for a track that I had from 4 years ago that he really liked, and he's a shuffle dancer. So he wanted to do a video shuffle dancing. So we're working on making that. That'll be fun. So, I mean, I don't know. My channel's a variety channel. So sometimes you're going to get your long, boring synth demo where I talk about this or that. Sometimes you'll get, a 10 or 15 minute audio demo. Sometimes you'll get a live stream of me for 2 or 3 hours working on music. And yeah, I think that'll just, I think that'll continue. It's just kind of like what I want to do is kind of what I do. And maybe that's not the best idea for growth, right? But I want to enjoy what I'm doing. And so and I want to share it with everybody. So that's the idea of the channel in the first place.
I see. And I wish you all the best success. Your channel is great, and it's been a real great resource for many of us within the community. Thank you for everything that you've done, and I look forward to what else you do in the future.
Yeah, thanks, Kero. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, no problem. Do you have anything that you'd like to plug?
Yeah, if you guys want to check out what I do, you can visit my YouTube channel, or you visit my website. It's marshalarnold.com. It's Marshall with one L. And my record label, overclockedmusic.com.
Links will be in the description below. Thank you, everyone, for coming by. This was Kero Ruripado, and this was Marshal Arnold. Take care, everyone.
Bye.